What do you think, first of all, though, about this purported, potential, rumoured increased offer? Double your money.
Well, we've always said we will pay our legal obligations, but I wouldn't offer them a penny until we have a clear resolution of the end economic arrangements. They flatly refuse to talk about trade. It's perfectly obvious it's in all our interests, particularly the Europeans, who have this huge surplus with us of 71.8 billion sterling last year. We want reciprocal free trade and zero tariffs. That's the ideal. But they've refused to talk about that. And I said, with a number of others, including senior people like Nigel Lawson, ex-Chancellor, that we should...
He's a hard-line, hard Brexiteer, just to...
Hang on, no, what we're saying, no, Brexit means Brexit. Brexit means we leave, and they're not prepared to talk about the arrangements at the end, so we should assume and tell them formally, regretfully, that we are going to go and plan to go on WTO terms. Now, everyone says this is all caricatured as leaping off a cliff and no deal. That's nonsense. It's a global trade deal, the terms under which countries like the United States and India have accelerated their sales into the European market faster than we have while being members of it. But that would give all our administrators, our customs, our ports, and above all our trucking industries time to prepare. And if they come back to us and say, hang on, guys, hang on, we would like to talk about free trade, that's great. That would be really good, because obviously a comprehensive free trade deal with no tariffs is the best arrangement of all. But at the moment, we've wasted October, we've wasted November on the trade front, talking about secondary matters, and the clock is ticking. And I think we need to give clarity and certainty to industry. And this issue of money, which they're absolutely obsessing by...
Clarity to industry, then.
Should come at the end.
When can we give clarity to industry, which is so important for our economy, for our businesses,
when
for our
the
jobs?
Europeans... Exactly the point I'm making. When the Europeans are prepared to sit down and talk about what has to be the number one issue.
What if they don't?
They are driven by the whole political narrative, the whole political project. They're obsessing about political issues and not the main one, which is the one of paramount interest to everybody in the UK.
You say Brexit means Brexit.
Don't forget, there are 5 million Europeans depend on sales to the UK. They have enormous interest in continuing seamless free trade with us.
They have enormous interest in making sure that other countries do not see our Brexit, our exit, as being too easily done. Otherwise, they're worried that the whole edifice might crumble. Let me ask you about that phrase, Brexit means Brexit. We hear it all the times. Surely Brexit means nothing. Ken Clarke said this effectively the other day. When the result came in, when it was clear we were leaving the European Union, it came as a huge surprise to many of those who'd been campaigning for it. And nobody had an idea what it would mean, how it would work itself out, because there are many different forms and shapes of Brexit potentially, aren't there?
No, I think we were very clear in the referendum campaign. We had a very simple slogan, which was take back control. So for instance, I was the Secretary of State at DEFRA. Probably about 90% of what DEFRA does is struggle to interpret European rules and impose them on our agriculture and particularly our fisheries, which causes an utter disaster, where we throw back 1 million tons of perfectly healthy fish back dead into the sea as pollution every year. Mm-hmm. So I was very clear it was going to be about taking back control. So we take back control. That means leaving the single market, leaving the customs union, and leaving the remit, above all, of the European Court of Justice. One of my biggest surprises on day one at DEFRA was to find we were being fined, disallowance in Eurospeak, £600 million. And there was absolutely no appeal that I could go to as the DEFRA Secretary. So we're very clear that taking back control meant bringing back decisions that would affect every citizen in this country into the hands of elected politicians.
Some people argue that some people argue that the very process of leaving will mean that we will lose control. A senior civil servant, a leading actor in this behind the scenes, said to me the other day, "We will inevitably become law takers rather than lawmakers."
That's complete rubbish. Look, we know perfectly well the establishment hates the whole thing. We've got a constitutional phenomenon that recent referendums have all gone with the flow of what the establishment wanted. For the first time, the people have very decisively, by a massive vote of 17.4 million people, gone against the establishment. The political establishment, the civil service, the legal establishment, the commercial establishment, the media establishment, they all hate it. And there's been this very strong Remainer fight back in recent months. But the simple fact is 494 MPs voted for Article 50, which means we leave on the 29th of March 2019, and we have to prepare. And Mike, going right back to the beginning, the key thing is to prepare the commercial relationship with our neighbours. We want to continue, as I've said, reciprocal free trade with zero tariffs. That is the best deal, but they won't talk about that. We should assume we go to WTO terms, the terms on which we trade with the rest of the world, and we should do that shortly. Money
but won't crashing out of the
we
EU...
pay our legal obligations at the end when we know what they are, and that should be the last thing we decide. And that's pretty well what the Cabinet, as I understand it, decided
if I may,
yesterday.
There was this white paper, wasn't there, that said this is according to the government's first detailed contingency planning for Brexit. Two new white papers say that crashing out of the EU without a deal will impose a raft of new regulations on business. It will require thousands of new civil servants. It will require reams of new red tape. So these are the very things. Well, this is what the paper said, despite pre-referendum promises that it would rid Britain of excessive red tape and bureaucrats. She said the new proposals were going to be necessary to minimise disruption.
No, WTO is not no deal. WTO is a global deal, terms under which we trade with the rest of the world, and there is a well-established arrangement, policed in Geneva, for administering that. I totally agree. Going back to your comment of the civil servant, actually, we will get our seat back in full on world bodies, such as the most obvious one is the World Trade Organization, but there were ones fewer people have heard of when I was doing DEFRA, which covered food and plant disease and animal disease. At the moment we sit out, we sit passively while the EU represents us, not always terribly effectively. And we will get our full role on those bodies back. And that increasingly is where world regulation is decided. And we'll have real allies in that. So on agriculture, we'll have countries, when I was working at people like New Zealand, Australia, possibly the States, possibly Canada would be working with us. And that is the future. That is where actually the European Union are increasingly become law takers. So this thing that we're going to accept from it is complete rubbish. We'll play a much bigger role collaborating at world level and making sure that we make sure that those